What is up YouTube, and welcome to this Loki Season 1 finale video. And oh boy, I knew it from episode 1 that Kang, or a version of Kang, was behind this all, and yep, we got it. Jonathan Majors has in 24 hours been nominated for an Enemy and debuted in the MCU. This was a gigantic shift in the MCU that changes almost every single part of the universe for all time. Always. I loved the opening with the iconic quotes from across all of the MCU movies, as well as quotes from Greta Thunberg, Nelson Mandela, and Maya Angelou. Now, I think this is us being shown the multiverse collapsing and possibly being recreated into one single timeline. Now, it could be as well that this is just showing us the universe as it is now on the sacred timeline, which, to be honest, I think might be a bit more likely. I'd love to know what you think down in the comments on that one. As we pick up almost exactly where we left off, as Sylvie and Loki are walking to the castle whose occupant has been speculated heavily. I've always said it was Kang behind all of this, and now after last week I did have a little bit of hope that it could be a Secret Wars version of God Emperor Doctor Doom. I love how Miss Minutes was a hell of a jump scare there, and I kind of wish we saw more of her. But she introduces the place as the Citadel at the end of time. In the comics, it was introduced in Thor 245, and it was indeed on an asteroid. The materials from this asteroid appear in Renslayer's office and in front of the judges in the Time Court, and also the elevator to the Timekeeper's chamber. In the comics, it is the place of He Who Remains, who is the final director of the TVA, who created beings to guide the next cycle of the universe as it keeps resetting. However, here, He Who Remains is evidently a version of Nathaniel Richards or Kang the Conqueror. However, he has robes much like the Immortus version of Kang, and in the show, He Who Remains explains that all of this was meant to happen, as he has seen what happens if there is actually a proper multiverse. He explains that a variant of himself lived in the 31st century and discovered the multiverse where many different worlds lived on top of each other. And eventually they would actually fight and want supremacy for each of their own universes. This does somewhat remind me of the incursions that did lead to Secret Wars, and He Who Remains discovered Alioth and ended the war and created his own timeline that was ring-fenced with Alioth around it. In the comics, Nathaniel Richards would travel all of time and have many different versions of himself and have many different time paradoxes that try to conquer everything. This is something which I'm very excited to see moving forward in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is why in the show he says he's been called Conqueror, and this story is a bit more like the Immortus section of the Kang story. In the future in the comics, Richards would be contacted by the Teamkeepers to be their agents, which would get very, very weird, and he would go on to try to control time and master it, and became the Master of Limbo, which is where we saw in the show. And this adaptation of the show is near perfect in my eyes. It allows the next phase and next Thanos tier villain to have many different versions and appear many different times. My criticism was that we didn't really see Thanos much apart from cameos until Infinity War. At the start, the variants were offered the opportunity to be put back in the timeline, Loki as the ruler having won the Battle of New York, and even later maybe defeating Thanos and having the Infinity Gauntlet, and Sylvie with her new memories. These are two scenes which were in the trailer but did not feature in the finale. But He Who Remains is tired and offers them the opportunity to take over and rule over everything themselves and keep it safe. Now, He Who Remains warns that something worse is out there. Countless different variants of himself, countless Nathaniel Richards, and Kangs would invade, leading to a new multiversal war. Instead of Kangs throughout time, they are from different timelines or realities. Yeah, I think it's really cool how these timelines and realities are kind of changing things here in the MCU, instead of just literally being from different multiverses, worlds, and time and realities are being handled very well here in my opinion. However, the timeline has, in their conversation, gone beyond what He Who Remains knows, and the Nexus events are growing at an exponential rate, causing the multiverse to exist. Cue rampant speculation that this is how the mutants, Fantastic Four, and Sony Spider-Man will be folded into the MCU. Naturally, the Lokis cannot decide nor trust, wanting chaos for Sylvie and Loki being more pragmatic. They finally kiss, which was a bit weird, but they do fight heavily and Loki is pushed into the TVA. More on that in a bit. Now Sylvie wins and kills our boy, He Who Remains, who was just tired of it all. However, we now have the problem that there is a multiverse where Kangs will invade. There was a Council of Kangs in the comics where Prime Kang tried to wipe out the others in some parts and replace them with robots, and it's sort of similar here with He Who Remains actually wiping out his other selves. And I do wonder if they will start to unite and form a proper council to really conquer all time, always. Now, I really did like how we pretty much had a Council of Kangs when it was explained the history of the entire multiverse when we saw them actually working together, which was pretty darned cool. So that was a nice thing. And moving forward, I think that we will see Kang obviously become the huge villain of this saga. Feige has said that they will have shorter sagas, so that'll be interesting to see how they balance that. And Kang moving forward is pretty much the main villain, and it's going to be so much fun to see that go forward. Now, Kang is, of course, thrust throughout time. We had a young Avenger, Iron Lad, as well, which we didn't see him here, but we've got, of course, young Sylvie, and we also have Loki, the young Loki as well. So moving forward, it's going to be a huge thing for the MCU, and I thought it was expert how well He Who Remains pretty much said, see you soon. He is sort of the good version of Kang somewhat, because he knows what his kind can do and what happens if their evilness is revealed upon the whole multiverse. We also found out just what Ravonna really was. Of course, we know she's a variant, and she appears to have been a teacher until her variant was taken, and we see the OG Ravonna as B-15 exposes the lies to the rest of the Hunters. Of course, in the comics, Ravonna was the lover of Kang eventually, and here in the show, she has been given instructions by He Who Remains on what to do next. In the comics, after Kang's death, she would accidentally release Alioth, which I expect her to now to be doing, but on purpose, to attempt to stop the multiverse war. However, there's one major problem, as the multiverse has collapsed and Loki is in the wrong reality. We see Mobius and B-15 talk about the collapse of all things ever and the multiverse being created, and we're led to believe that this is actually the Mobius that tried to take on Ravonna, but they have no idea who Loki is. I love how Loki will now be in this reality in season 2, having to explain it all and explain why the man who is seemingly in charge of the TVA in this reality actually evil. Now, it could be Kang simply invaded this reality already, and I expect to see where this goes next. I'm very excited, as the pan up to the Kang statue was stunning when we see his full outfit, and you saw the helmets that they have in the comics when the multiverse war was explained, and it was very Planet of the Apes. He Who Remains creating the timeline so none of himself get created is superb, as he is the constant in the multiverse war, and another version of himself will appear in Ant-Man Quantumania. I think that Jonathan Majors has the chops to play many different versions of himself. He is a superb actor, and I expect Loki Season 2 to lead up into Ant-Man Quantumania, and I love how this is how Wanda could hear her kids, as the timelines are now out of control, so there is a timeline where her kids survived. It will no doubt lead into the multiverse of madness and Spider-Man No Way Home, which I am very, very excited to see moving forward. Now, this was just a short kind of breakdown for you here. There wasn't a lot to kind of really dissect in the episode, but there are some big themes moving forward. I thought it was a fantastic end to the season, and I hope that moving forward, the next shows don't wait until the final episode to reveal the big bad. But that is it for this video. Please drop a like down below. Please do subscribe with notifications on, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.